Key metrics that every agency should track on a monthly basis: profits, both historical and projected; cash, which includes monitoring your receivables and your payables; client profitability or margin, so that you can measure which projects or clients are offering you a return; and employee utilization. And when agencies have the resources and the processes in place, they should look at these things on a weekly basis, especially their cash and their receivables. One metric that small to medium-sized agencies often overlook, especially when they're starting up, is employee utilization. That's understanding how many client hours your employees are working. Employee utilization is a percentage of direct time versus the total time available to you. Employee utilization is a percentage of the number of client hours that an employee has worked versus the total number of hours that that employee has worked. And this is a critical metric for agencies to monitor because it helps them understand what's going on with their workforce, who's not working enough, and who's working too much. Once you establish the number of client hours that you're expecting from each particular employee in each particular role, then you can develop an idea of what the appropriate utilization percentage is for that particular employee. Utilization is going to be different across all agencies, and there's a lot of different ways to calculate it, but let's use a simple calc, right? So there's 2,080 hours in a year in general. That's taken 52 weeks per year times 40 hours per week. That gets you 2,080 hours. And then you assume, well, folks are going to take some vacation time. They might have a week of sick time. There's going to be some administrative time. They might go to some training. Okay. Well, then you might say, hey, a fully utilized or a fully client-facing role, I'm going to expect them to work 1,800 hours in a calendar year. Then you take your 1,800 hours, you divide it by 2080, and that gives you a utilization percentage of 86, 87% using this kind of simplified approach. And in that case, right, you would then know, hey, this person's at 87%, they're a fully utilized client-facing employee. If they're at 90%, well, that means that, hey, you know what? They're working more than we expect them to on serving our clients. So, like I said, there's a lot of different ways to calculate utilization. Some agencies like to look at it and remove holidays, for example, from the 2080 hours in the denominator, and that gives you a slightly different percentage. But of course, as a general rule, I would want a fully client-facing employee on my team to be working above 80% per year. It's very important that you're looking at both your historical information and your projected information so that you can understand if any adjustments are required to your business. Do I need to be staffing up for this new client that we've won? Or do I need to be evaluating places that I can cut some cost because I'm expected to go into sort of a slower season where my cash collections, for example, might slow down? And that's why looking at these 3 to 5 things on a monthly basis is so important. If you're an agency and you're not looking at your receivables on a regular basis and working those receivables to make sure that you're making phone calls and collecting amounts that are due to you, you're in for a big cash flow surprise. And then the same goes with your payables, right? Your payables tell you, here are the amounts that I have coming due and when. And of course, you need to stay on top of those so that you can be a good partner for your vendors. So agencies that focus on reviewing their client or project margin or client or project profitability have a much better understanding of which revenue is boosting their bottom line and which revenue is dragging it down. And then understanding your client profitability or your client margin or your project profitability, think profitability by project, helps you understand which revenue is really helping bring home the net income. Looking at these reports on a monthly basis is critical to understanding what's going on in your business. And it can get a little complicated. And that's why having the right folks with the right understanding to help you understand these things in plain English is mandatory for all business owners, especially agency owners who oftentimes tend to come from creative backgrounds and not finance backgrounds. In my mind, it's we're monitoring our income statement, often referred to as the P&L or profit and loss, right? It shows us our inflows of resources, think money, and our outflows of resources, think our costs, right? And that gets us to a net income or net loss. Obviously, net income, that's what we're shooting for. Okay. Then we have to kind of convert that and think about our actual cash, right? When do we collect the cash? When do we pay the cash? And that's a little bit different than looking at just the income statement and making sure that you're monitoring both those things and using one to sort of project and help inform the other is a critical step in the right direction to becoming a more sophisticated ad agency.